Hashem. All right. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, School of Mitzvot. Coming on this difficult weather. But Baruch Hashem, we're here learning. Baruch Hashem, Hilchot Shabbat. Tonight, B'ezras Hashem, we will be continuing to the next Melacha, which is called Melechet Melaben. Melaben, I believe you can translate as cleansing or cleaning, whitening. Really, it comes from the word lavan, which means to make white, to make something into nice and clean cloth. So what is Melechet Melaben? So again, this beautiful definition from the 39 Melachos book by Rabbi Ribiat. Cleansing absorbent materials that have absorbed soil, grime, or other impurities. Whenever you have an absorbent material, it's a key word, something that absorbs. So then if it has absorbed any kind of soil, grime, or any other kind of impurity, something that's embedded within the fibers of that material, and then you cleanse it, so you just did Melechet Melaben. Where was this done? In the construction of the Mishkan. So whenever they had wool that they had to shear off of the sheep or any other kind of hides that were used, so then by cleaning it, by taking the impurities out of it, by cleaning the wool and making it nice and white, so that was now wool that was able to be used for the construction of the Mishkan. They would take it, they would make thread out of it, they would turn it into curtains. It's actually this week's parasha. We learned it in these parashiot that we're in the middle of right now. The idea that the Mishkan was made of 3 huge curtains that draped over the entire Mishkan. So that required wool. And you had to have pure wool, which means you have to clean it, and that's Melaben. So what is involved? What are we looking at over here as far as practically? So basically, when you have any kind of garment that absorbs and you clean it, that's called Melaben. That's the reason why you cannot launder on Shabbat. So if, let's say, you have a stain on a shirt, you have a nice shirt, unfortunately it got a stain, you cannot take water, put it on that shirt and clean it, because that act of laundering is considered to be Melaben. Right? Very important to be aware of that. A lot of people don't know. Right away, instant reaction, take some water, clean it up so it doesn't make a stain. That is indeed a very grave sin on Shabbat, called Melechet Melaben. Okay, so now the key is that this is only applicable to that which is absorbed. But if, let's say, it's some kind of external soil, dirt, grime, but it's not absorbed in the fabric, or if, let's say, that it was something completely external, for example, a string that fell on top of a shirt, right? So to remove the string, the spot is now white because you removed the black string. That's not something which was absorbed into the clothing, and therefore it's not a problem to remove it. Same thing would apply to crumbs that are on your shirt. You get the crumbs off, or dandruff, right? You're allowed to get rid of it. Or feathers that fall onto a shirt. Sometimes that happens. So technically, you're allowed to go ahead and do that. Now, by the way, you should know certain objects are considered to be muktzeh. Muktzeh is not allowed to be directly moved. The halacha is, when it comes to muktzeh, you can move it from the inside, shake it off like this or like that. Technically, dirt is considered to be muktzeh. So like that would be okay, but not direct. Alrighty? That's the idea. Very important to be aware. B'ezras Hashem, bli neder, we'll get to the laws of muktzeh. But you should know, strings that are a part of a beged may not be removed because of melechet makeh v'patish, which means like this. The Gemara says that if you have a shirt that has some strings that were supposed to be removed from the shirt, but for some reason the final processing never happened, and they never finished cutting off those last 2 strings that are dangling from the bottom of the shirt, or maybe there are a couple of strings that are in the middle of the shirt, whatever the situation may be, and you go and you cut those strings, so that is considered to be finishing the shirt, And the name of that melacha, which Bli Neder will get to, is called makeh patish. Makeh patish means hitting with a hammer, but it's another way of saying whenever you finish something and you complete something, so that if there were any imperfections, you fix it. Basically, it's another way of saying fixing something or creating something that was not functioning. In this case, it was functioning, but it was with an imperfection. So therefore, the halacha is that to remove a string that is there, left, basically supposed to be removed, and it's not removed, and you fix that, that's called melechet makeh bepatish, which means hitting with a hammer, which is another way of saying fixing an imperfection. So far, so good? Yes? Okay, amazing. Just making sure. Let's go. So let's say somebody is eating something, he's got a cholent bean, and the cholent bean falls onto his shirt, or a piece of meat from the choresh falls onto his shirt. Can he remove it? Of course he can remove it, no problem, because it's something external. However, the question now becomes, what about the leftover stain? Can you take something and wipe that off? The answer is that you're allowed to, so long as you are not wetting it and not cleaning it. You're definitely going to have a stain left over, and therefore you're not considered to be laundering the shirt. You're just getting off the external thickness. However, you cannot do something to try and remove the oil. For example, if you squeeze that spot so that whatever oil is there comes out, press it with some kind of spoon or knife or something so that what's absorbed comes out, that you may not do. Can't rub it together like this because you're trying to get out what's inside the fabric. Yes?
Taking out a string, can that also be like removing a tag from an item?
A tag that's dangling?
Yeah.
It's a great question. So Rabbi Riviat, in his 39 Melachos book, explains that a tag is actually different. The reason that it's different is because it's external to the shirt. So that what that means is that if you have a dangling tag, meaning one of those plastics that are like looped into the item with a price tag on it. So believe it or not, he actually says, this is a beautiful application of an important halacha. The halacha says that whenever you have there are different levels of muktzeh. God willing, we'll learn all the different levels of muktzeh, but one of the easier and lighter levels of muktzeh is called kli shemelachto leisur. Kli shemelachto leisur means that whenever you have a vessel that does something prohibited, for example, a hammer builds. So a hammer is considered to be muktzeh because we're afraid you're going to take it and build with it. You're going to hammer a nail or something. Chazal said you cannot move a hammer, but if you need the hammer for either its place, let's say you put the hammer on the table before Shabbat and now you need to put a plate on the table, so you need the place of the hammer, you can move the hammer. Or if you need the hammer for it itself, you want to use the hammer for a permitted use. For example, cracking open a walnut, right? You want to do it for that reason, or a different type of nut, right? So the halacha says that's okay. You're using muktzeh, which is a muktzeh that is kli shemelachto leisur, in a permitted way, that's fine. You have to make sure to put it down in a good spot afterwards, because once you put it down, you can't move it anymore, unless it's, again, for permissible use. So the same applies to a pair of scissors. A pair of scissors is also considered to be muktzeh, because it does a melacha called mechatech, which is forbidden. But if you want to use it for a permissible use, you're allowed to use it for a permissible use. So says Rabbi Ribiad, you can take a pair of scissors, go over to the tag, and snip it right off. No problem. Very nice heter from Rabbi Ribiad. Not so, by the way, not so for the leftover laundromat, what's it called? The dry cleaning tags. The dry cleaning tags, he says, is different because it's stapled in, and it's like almost like it's if it's sewed into your clothing, so you wouldn't have the right to remove it. So there's a difference between the two.
Can we just rip off the tag?
The dry cleaning tag?
No, the dry cleaning tag.
Can you rip it? Yeah. Yeah. Yes, you can.
That's great.
But you make your life easier. Sometimes that you try to pull it and it's hard.
Right.
So if you use the scissors, it comes right off.
How can you cut the string?
Because you're destroying. You're not doing anything. You're not constructing with your act of cutting. Usually, the act of cutting is a constructive thing. You're cutting something to a certain shape that you need, or to a certain size that you need. So that's called mechatech.
So if I just cut off a paper, just the phone.
So you can't so it's forbidden rabbinically to destroy on Shabbat. You can't destroy for no reason. But if there's a necessary reason that you're doing it, you're allowed to. So over here, you're doing it because of the fact that you don't want to walk around with a tag on you, right? You need it. So that kind of destroying is okay.
Let's say you want to open up napkins that are really tightly sealed in plastic. Can you take a scissor and like cut the plastic on the outside?
If you do it in a destructive way. What do you mean? Like one of those plastic?
Like you really can't like get like to a place where you can open the plastic on the napkins. Like you need something sharp to like pierce it.
No problem. Yeah, that's a kli shemelachto leisur. It's tzorech gufo. It's a very important heter to know. Very important to be aware of that. Good. We'll learn that Be'ezrat Hashem when we go through muktzeh. Okay. So at any rate over here, the halacha is that you can take off that which is external on the stain, but you cannot try to take out that which is absorbed inside. That you can't do. So you could use, let's say, a paper towel, and gently clean the area so that you don't try and push out what's inside, because that would be an act of kibus, of cleaning, by removing the oil or whatever has been absorbed in the shirt. It's a superficial cleaning, and therefore you're not removing anything absorbed, and it's okay. But like I said, you can't put water on the stain. You can't rub the stain out by rubbing against another spot on the shirt. You can't do that. Okay, so that's very important to be aware of. Now, a lot to say over here. There's a concept in halacha called shiriyato zehu kibuso, which means that the Gemara makes a statement that the mere soaking of the garment in water is an act of Melaben. So that means simply getting the garment wet is going to be a problem. Now the question is, under what conditions? Always? Like, for example, does that mean if I'm washing my hands for netilat yadayim, I have to roll up my sleeves, or else I'm considered laundering my shirt if it gets wet? Is that the case? Or, for example, does that mean that if I have, or maybe I shouldn't be able to dry my hands, on a towel because I'm laundering the towel, right? I'm getting something wet on a piece of cloth which is going to absorb. So is that considered to be a problem or not? Or let's say I have to bathe the baby, and sometimes you have the baby seated on like a towel, and the towel is under the baby and he's going to get wet. Is that okay? So the general understanding is like this: when you have something which is dirty, that's the general understanding. When you have something which is dirty, and the washing of that dirty item, dirty cloth, is beneficial to that cloth, and now it's going to become cleansed through the water hitting it, so then we say the mere contact between the water and this dirty cloth is a problem of kibus, of laundering on Shabbat. But so long as the cloth is clean, so then we say that the fact that it hit the cloth doesn't mean that you laundered it because it was clean. It didn't need laundering. Okay? So therefore, a person does not have to roll up his sleeves when washing netilat yadayim so that no water gets onto his shirt, because his shirt is clean. I guess, however, if let's say that he's got a few stains on his cuffs, and he should, because now the water contacting his cuffs that have stains on them is actually laundering them, so he would make sure to roll up his sleeves. Is the distinction clear? Very good. Okay, great. Now, very important. Okay. So we mentioned in the past that due to this reason, I am allowed to clean up a spill with a towel. And we're not going to say that I'm laundering that towel. Why am I not laundering that towel? Let's say it's water, and now the towel is becoming clean. The reason is because right now I am doing what's called derech lichluch, which means when you clean something up, that means that this is considered to be dirty. You're not cleaning your towel, you're actually making your towel more dirty. And whenever that's the case, that's fine. Now remember that we are very concerned that you might come to squeeze your towel. So we learned in the past, you have to make sure that you have enough towel to clean up your entire spill. If you don't, we're worried that you might come to squeeze out the water that's in there and then go back and do it again. So if you don't have enough towel with just one towel to clean up the spill, you need to, from the beginning, bring enough, which could mean 2 or 3 towels maybe, to clean it all up in one shot so that you don't have to wring out the water. But again, the concept I'm trying to bring out is that it's considered to be derech lichluch. Derech lichluch means you are not making the towel clean, the opposite, you're making it dirty. That's why it's okay. So that's why you're allowed to wipe your hands on the towel, because you're actually making the towel dirty. Now, this is all permissible on one condition. It's all permitted on condition that it's the kind of cloth that you are okay leaving wet. If, let's say, you do not have, you're not okay with leaving this cloth wet, you want to dry it, so then it's a big problem, because then we're concerned you might do something to dry it, and that's a big issue. So the reason that a towel is okay, or the reason that, let's say, a rag might be okay, is because rags are meant to be wet and be left wet. Towels, they get used all the time and they stay wet. You could put a wet pot on the towel or a wet plate on the towel, and the towel is meant to become soaking wet. So you don't care that it's going to stay wet. So because of the fact that you don't care, we're not nervous that you're going to go and try to squeeze out the water and dry it. But if it's the kind of cloth that you do care that it shouldn't stay wet, so there we're already concerned that you might come to do something about it, and therefore you should not use that kind of cloth to clean up anything, even though it's derech lichluch, which means it's getting dirty. Clear? Okay, so no? We're good? Okay, fine. Just making sure. We also learned, it's important to review, that when you have a soaking garment, a fully soaked garment, which is so wet that if you were to touch that garment, you would then, if you would put it on something else, it would make that other object wet. So again, you touch this, and now your finger is wet enough that if it touches something else, it makes it wet as well. The halacha is that you cannot carry such a garment alone. So for example, person comes back from the rain, it's soaking wet, right? So he's sopping wet. So he's not supposed to carry a fully soaking garment alone. The reason that he should not do that is, again, because over here, what kind of garment is it? Is it a garment that, is it a piece of cloth that he does not mind that it should stay wet? No, here it's a shirt. He does mind that it should be wet. He doesn't want it to be wet. He wants it to be dry so he could wear it. So therefore, the halacha says in this case, we're nervous that he's going to squeeze it out. So therefore, the halacha demands that he should not carry this garment alone. Let's say he wants to lay it out to dry somewhere, right? So remember, we learned in the past, number one, he's not allowed to put it by the radiator, the heater, or by a fire, because that could bring it up to a heat temperature that would actually be considered cooking the water. Remember, we discussed this, right? And also, he has to remember that he cannot carry it alone. We're concerned he might wring it out. He must have another person carry it with him so that they remind each other that they should not wring out the water from this shirt or whatever it is. So far, so good? Yes, you have a question? Yeah.
So if you're cleaning like a spill on the floor and the towel gets so dirty, so wet that you don't, what another service, somebody else has to carry that towel with you, or?
No, so that towel, we say that since you don't mind that it should stay wet, we're not concerned that you're going to wring it out. It's meant to be wet. It's a towel.
So only if you care to dry the garment?
Yes.
It's so wet that it only.
Exactly. You got it. Very good. Great. Okay, let's go. Very good. So again, that's exactly right. The whole problem is only because this garment is usually meant to be dry. and you're makpid, you care that it should be dry. But if it's something like a towel or a rag that you're not makpid that it should be dry, so then it's okay to carry it alone. Very good. Okay. Interesting question. What happens if a roll of toilet paper or a tissue box falls into the toilet? I'm sure that's happened to all of you. It's happened to me plenty of times. So can you take it out and move it? So it's interesting. I saw brought down that you should bring the garbage bag to it, because if you are, meaning you should not carry it around the house looking for something, because at that point already you want the water to come out, and therefore it's in the category of things that you were afraid you might squeeze. So therefore bring the garbage bag to it and just dump it, just drop it right away. Pull out and drop. Okay, very good. Okay, now before we get to this, we have to talk about some other things. Okay, now we said that you cannot put wet clothing by a heater or by a radiator because there's a problem of bishul. There's also a problem of Melaben, which is that by you drying up that water inside, you are now actually laundering the clothing. So that's a very important thing to remember. By you drying up the water inside, you're actually causing the clothing to become laundered, and therefore it's a problem. But I saw a beautiful point brought down by Chacham David Yosef Shlita in his new book on Hilchot Amir al-Nachri on Shabbat. He says over there beautifully that if you remember, it's a beautiful application of a halacha that we already learned. We learned that you're allowed to ask a goy on Shabbat to do something which is a psik reisha. Remember, what's a psik reisha, everybody? Remember? Who wants to say? Anybody remember?
Didn't mean for it to happen.
Right, you didn't mean for it to happen, but
It's for sure gonna happen.
it's for sure going to happen. Exactly. When you know for a fact that it's going to happen. So therefore, are you allowed to do it? No, because you know for a fact that it's going to happen. That's right. But we learned already, Baruch Hashem, that you're allowed to ask a goy to do a psik reisha, meaning that the reason that you can't do it is because we say that in the event that it happens and you knew it was going to happen, then you meant for it to happen. Very good. But when it comes to a goy, we don't have to have in mind, we have to be strict on ourselves in that respect. But to tell a goy to do something, all we have to stay away from is not instructing him to do melacha. But if the act itself is not an act of melacha, it's an act that results in a melacha, that you could ask a goy to do. So therefore, says Chacham David, in the same way that we learned previously, that you can ask a goy to open up the door to the car if you want to take out something from the car and the light will turn on. We said, no problem. Why? Because you didn't ask him to turn on the light, you asked him to open a door. That's okay, right? So you can't do it because you know it will result in the light turning on, but the goy could do it. You could ask the goy to do it because you're not asking him to turn a light, you're asking him to open up a door. So therefore, same thing over here by the fridge. Like we said, you can ask a goy to open up the door of the fridge if you left the light on. No problem. Why? Because you're asking him to open up a door, not to turn on a light. Same thing over here. If you want this goy to put your wet shirt, sopping wet, soaking wet, you want him to put it by the radiator so that it dries up and so that everything cooks and so that the item becomes clean and laundered, so to say. So what are you instructing the goy to do? Put it over there. Are you telling him cook for me? No. Are you telling him launder for me? No. So therefore, you can have a goy do that. Very nice heter from Chacham David. Is it clear? Is it clear why? Yeah? No?
Oh, it is cool.
Okay, great. You have a question? Okay, what's up?
So, radiant floors, they don't get so hot. But
Mhm.
like, let's say you pick up a water spill on the floor and you put a towel over it.
Yeah,
So you have to remove the towel right away.
because it's going to get very hot. Will it get to 113 degrees?
No,
111 degrees? That's very hot if it does, right?
it wouldn't get to.
Right.
It's not, that's a little bit, it's okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to worry about it. Yeah. Very good. Okay. Good. Very nice point from Chacham David. Okay, so now I want to talk about another point, that there's a big machloket between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. This is a very interesting halacha. I'll read it to you inside. It says over here, Hamenaer, Siman Shin Bet Sif Aleph, Hamenaer talit chadasha shchora min hatal she'alea. If somebody has a brand new black talit, talit over here doesn't mean, like what you wear in shul. It means some kind of garment, let's say a jacket, a sweater, something like that. So he's got a brand new black sweater, and he I guess he left it outside, and there were droplets of dew that went onto this sweater in the morning. He comes to the sweater and he sees these droplets of dew, and he decides to just kind of knock them off. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Chayav, he is liable for a sin offering. He violated Shabbat. Why? Shehani'ur yafela kemo kibus. Because by shaking off those droplets of dew, it's like laundering. And this is all on condition that he is careful not to wear it while dew is on it, that he will not wear it unless he gets rid of the dew. So this is considered to be an act of laundering. Again, but what were the three conditions? First of all, we're talking about dew. That's number one, which is, it falls naturally onto whatever is outdoors every night. And then he says, you're talking about a brand new black garment. Okay. And he also has to be a kind of guy that will not wear it with dew. Very interesting case. Very, very interesting case. So that seems to imply that if it's not a black garment, or if it's not brand new, or if he doesn't care to wear it with dew, then there would be no problem to shake off these things. Okay, so that's step one. Now, that's discussing dew. However, the poskim say, but if it rained on the person and there's a lot of water on this garment, so now we're not talking about dew, we're talking about rain. So then it's asur to shake off the water if it was never washed before. So again, we're still in this condition of it's new, it's never been washed before. However, if it was washed before, then it's okay to shake off that rain, even though it's a lot of rain, but you cannot squeeze it. Remember, there's a difference between shaking something off like this versus squeezing it, and that's already a problem. So again, just to sum it up, if it is rainwater, and we're speaking about a brand new object that's black, so then the halacha says that you cannot shake it off if it's a lot of rainwater, but if it is dew, so then as long as one of those three conditions are missing, it's not black, it's not new, or he doesn't care about it, so then the halacha says that he is allowed to shake it off. Okay, now there's a big argument over here between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah regarding dust. Can you take some dust off of an object on Shabbat? So the Shulchan Aruch, as we just learned, seems to have no problem with removing any dust. He doesn't say there's any issue with taking dust off of a hat, even a brand new black hat that you never wore before, or anything else that's black. He doesn't mention it. It's not even an issue. But according to the Ramah, which all the Ashkenazim follow, once you remove dust from any garment of clothing, it's a big problem. So now, where does that leave us? So the answer is, if you're makpid, if you care about not having dust on it, or any kind of dirt, so then the halacha says that it's better to stay away from removing dirt from something that is, again, in this category of black and these types of things, like it's brand new black, all that stuff. To remove dirt or dust from it would be a problem. Lechatchila, remember, just as a chumrah. But according to Shulchan Aruch, it's not really a problem to remove dirt or dust from any kind of object. Why is that, guys? Let's just go back to what we said in the beginning. The reason is because it's a problem of laundering when it's absorbed in the clothing. But if it's not absorbed in the clothing, so then it's not really a problem. And over here, this dust is not really absorbed in the clothing. So therefore, to remove it would not really be an issue. But on something like we said, that's brand new and it's black, it was never laundered before, and he doesn't want the dust there. So there we say, lechatchila, don't take the dust off. Is it clear? Am I just doing my thing over here? I'm just looking down the whole time. I'm not hearing any response. Okay, but is it clear so far, so good? Yes? Okay, amazing. Okay. Now, again, I'm going to run back to this very important yesod that we learned already. We had this come up in the laws of Bishul. Like we said, there was a big argument over there whether or not you could reheat something that was already cooked. And we said that the Chida gave us a beautiful chidush, and he said that since there are great rabbis who allowed you to reheat something that was already cooked, like a soup, and we said that we don't hold like that, but we did say you're allowed to ask a goy to do it. So the same thing over here. If you, again, we have a big dispute. Shulchan Aruch has no problem with you taking dust off of any garment whatsoever. The Ramah does have a problem with it. We said ideally, if it's new and black and all these conditions, you don't want the dust there. So we said ideally stay away from it. However, if there's a goy around and you want to ask the goy to dust it off for you, no problem whatsoever. Okay? Why? Because again, whenever there's an argument amongst the authorities, whether a Jew is allowed to do it or not, so we stay away, but to ask a goy to do it, no problem. Okay. Okay, now remember, there's another important point that we learned in the past as well, which is that sometimes there is no goy around, but we did say that if let's say there are those who hold you're allowed to do it, and we say not to, but if you do it beshinui, you do it in a weird way, then you have a heter as well. So if there's no goy around over here, the poskim say you could get rid of it kilachar yad, which means in a weird way, like, something, I guess maybe doing something strange, getting it off in a weird way. Okay. Now, and again, this whole discussion is because you're makpid. It's because you care about it. But in the event that, normally speaking, this doesn't mean anything to you, you don't care about it, you don't care about the dust, so then there's really no issue at all to get rid of it whatsoever. Okay, now, what about materials that do not absorb? So nylon doesn't absorb, so it'd be okay to shake it off, right? If you have some kind of water and some kind of spill, there's no problem to shake off something from a non-absorbent material like nylon. Or if, let's say, a person has leather shoes and the leather is a non-absorbent material. Sometimes shoelaces are absorbent, so you have to be worried about that. But if it's just leather and you want to maybe pour some water on it or something like that to get rid of certain things, leather doesn't absorb. So therefore, there wouldn't be a problem to clean the shoes. But again, if they're cloth, right, that's a big problem. Certain types of sneakers have real material there, real cloth, and they would absorb. And therefore, it's a very important thing to be aware that, not always is it okay. If it's a synthetic material that doesn't absorb, if it's a leather, right, then you would be allowed to kind of clean off the shoe, no problem. Because again, these things don't absorb. So the question of laundering does not really apply to them. However, they do have material that absorbs. Sometimes the shoelaces absorb, and definitely you can't do any shoe polish, right? You can't do any shoe polish on these things. That would be a big problem of smearing and of other things. So no shoe polish whatsoever. Clear? Yes.
One question, let's say your kids are playing in the playground, they come home with like very dirty shoes. So if the shoes are leather, I could use a wipe to clean them off, but let's say they're just like regular sneakers, like half leather, half like material.
Yeah.
You can't use a wipe.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, good point. Right. Because the shoes won't absorb, but the
I
other
can just use like a paper towel.
paper towel that's not wet would be very good. Yeah, exactly. Okay, excellent. All right. Now, very interesting. There's a big discussion here about folding on Shabbat. So I'll make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Okay. There's a big discussion here in the halacha about folding on Shabbat. Now look, I'm going to read you a halacha. It's so amazing the way Shulchan Aruch says this. It sounds like there's the biggest heter on earth to fold clothing, no problem. And then you'll see where he goes. He says the following. Mekaplim kelim b'Shabbat. You're allowed to fold clothing on Shabbat, or I guess maybe sheets or whatever it may be. Letzorech Shabbat, as long as you're doing it on Shabbat, for the purpose of Shabbat. Lelav shambo, to wear it on Shabbat. Bayom, right, to wear it on during the day. V'dafka be'adam echad, only if it's one person. U'bechadashim she'adayin lo nitkapsu, and it's only on brand new clothing that have never been washed before. Ulevanim, white clothing. Ve'en lo le'achlif, and you don't have anything else to wear. So you're allowed to fold something on Shabbat as long as you're folding it by yourself. You're going to wear it on Shabbat. If it's brand new, never been washed before, and it's white, and you have nothing else to wear. So, it's like it's about to say like this huge heter, and then it tells you you can't fold anything except something brand new, white, that you have nothing else to wear, and like that. So he says, "V'im chaser achat me'elu atnaim." You're missing even one of these conditions. Asur. You can't do it. Now he says, "V'yesh mi she'omer." However, you should know, says Shulchan Aruch, "Delekaplo shelo keseder kipulo rishon mutar bechol inyan." He says you should know that there is an opinion who holds that to fold it not on the creases, the original folding that you had it folded beforehand, that's permissible always. And then Shulchan Aruch ends off v'nir'im dvarav, and he seems to be right. So if you don't fold it on the original lines, it's okay. So again, what is the issue here? Why is folding such a big problem? So the answer is that folding has kibbutz-like properties. Kibbutz again means laundering. It has a certain effect. Sometimes if you know how to fold something really well, you come out looking really good. Come out looking much better than what it was before, if it's folded like really nice and properly. Chazal therefore said that you cannot fold unless you're really in dire straits. You don't have anything except this brand new item, and you have nothing else to wear, and it's white, and you're going to wear it on Shabbat during the day, right? So other than that, you cannot fold unless the only other heter that we have is that you're folding it, but not on the original lines. Why does that help you? Because the original lines are the lines of the fold that really make it look nice and good. But if you fold it not on those lines, so now you've got the original lines when you wear it, it's like, you've got a line over here, now a line over there. It doesn't look as good. Doesn't have that laundering effect as before. Sorry, you had a question? Yeah.
I'm a little bit like, I don't understand. You can't fold on Shabbat, and it's like totally something I didn't think I couldn't do. Like, let's say my kids are playing hide and seek and they like go into the linen closet, they throw down all the towels. I can't like fold the towels and put them back.
So towels. No, so that's interesting. I never thought about towels. Here he's talking about clothing.
I feel like towels also, like in the kitchen, I'll replace like the hand towels and I'll fold them, I'll put them in the drawer.
Yeah, no, so I mean, there are certain things that I don't think they have folds to begin with. Like a towel, I don't think ever really gets a fold.
So
it's like he's talking here about clothing. I don't know. I'm gonna make a note for myself, Lineder, to ask about towels. I don't think that it's the same rule. A second. Sorry, yeah. So I'll get back to you. But I mean anything else, like let's say linens,
right?
Linens and clothing and all those things.
Like a tablecloth is very distinct.
Tablecloth.
Like when you open it,
Yeah.
Like
Exactly, right. Towels, I don't think are in the same category. I wouldn't think so, but I might be wrong. I'm gonna get back to you. Yeah.
So if you need the clothing for the next day, let's say it's not white and it's not new,
Can you hang it up? Like,
Hang,
you're wearing
you
the
can
same-
hang it.
hang it.
Sure, hang it is no problem. Folding is the problem. Folding it on the lines. So there's a big discussion about can you fold your talit? I know it's not really that applicable over here, but we hold. I mean, many. By the way, by the Ashkenazim, they're very strict not to fold the talit at all. They just kind of throw it, on the chair and leave it there till after Shabbat, and then wrap it up. Many do. Many have this thing where they fold it not on the right line, like we learned just now. But you should know the Sephardic custom is that by a talit that we wear every Shabbat, or every week, every day. So we hold that we do fold it on the lines normally. Chacham Ben Zion brings that down, and that's our custom. So B'nai Hashem, for your sons, if they ever have a question, you could tell them that we fold our talitot, no problem on Shabbat, no issue. Okay. You have had a question? We're good. Okay. When it comes to folding, we know that folding, even though it may make a crease, the Yalkut Yosef does say that if you fold on let's say you have a book, you want to mark the spot, you want to fold the corner of the page, that's considered to be okay. Over here, I have that folding blankets is okay. It's okay to fold a blanket. I guess because of the fact that it's not getting that crease, like I would imagine towels are the same thing. But make sure that you're not preparing for after Shabbat, because of the fact that if you're preparing for after Shabbat, it's a problem. The only time you're allowed to do this, even though you're not going to maybe use the bed until after Shabbat, is if you're so, I guess, maybe grossed out or upset that the room is such a mess and you feel an urge to address it by folding the blanket or folding whatever you need to fold in order that your room should look nicer in honor of Shabbat, then that would be acceptable. If a person has a hat that got a little smushed, you could fix the folded hat. It's not a problem. Okay, now we have to talk about what happens if somebody has dirt that lands on his clothing. Okay, the question is, how do you clean off that dirt? So the halacha, I believe we learned this in the past in the laws of Tochen. And what we learned is that you have to kind of push it off from the inside of your clothing. The reason is because when you push it off from the inside, meaning you would put your hand, let's say, inside your I don't know, whatever it is that it's underneath it, put it inside, and then shake it off like that from inside. And the reason that you do that from the inside is because it doesn't look like laundering when it's from the inside. So that's an important thing to be aware of as well. And like we said, we're not allowed to soak any kind of shirts or anything in water. We learned that Baruch Hashem already clearly. Okay. All right. So that's important to know how to get rid of the dirt. Also, if a person got dirt on his shoes, so it's brought down that he should kind of kick it against the wall. He shouldn't go ahead and here, I'll read it to you inside. First of all, what we just read before. When you have cement that got onto your shirt, so which means put your hand on the inside of that and then kind of push it off. Why? It does not appear like you're laundering if your hand is invisible. But he says, don't do it from the outside. Because that looks like you are doing laundry. You could kind of peel it off with your fingernail, but you cannot do it. You cannot do it to the point where there's no stain left. Remember that. If you're already taking out what's absorbed inside, that is a problem as well. Okay, I hope everything is clear. We have any questions? Bechavod, that was a great time. I think I'm done.
I have other questions.
Okay, so we'll stop over here. Thank you, everyone.